Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Christina from Our Home. We're going to be making some rhubarb upside down cake today. This is one of my new favorite recipes and a really great way to use rhubarb besides just a typical pie or mixing it into jam. Both of those are great, but this is something a little bit different. I'm going to read out the recipe as I'm making it in the video, but I'll also link a full recipe on my blog in the description of this video, so if you wanted to have a copy of that, you can check out that blog post. We're going to start off by cutting the leaves off the rhubarb. They are not safe to eat for humans or animals, so don't feed them to any livestock or pets, just toss them in the compost pile. I'm also going to cut off the very bottom of the stalk because it's a little bit slimy and just not great in my opinion. Then I'm going to wash the stalks and dry them before we prepare them to put in this cake. Now I'm using a mix of very red stalks and some more greenish stalks. It really doesn't matter the color. This is the cookbook that I use for the upside down cake recipes. It's a reprint of a vintage cookbook. I can't remember when it was originally published. This version was printed in 2010 and I got this book as an engagement present from my mother-in-law in 2011. I believe the first edition of this was published in 1967, and I do actually have a couple of the first editions, which is pretty nice. This one is very well loved. I've written a lot of notes and highlighted a lot of recipes that I enjoy. So I'm making the upside down cake with rhubarb instead of other fruit on top. Typically I make my upside down cakes just in a square pan because I don't necessarily need it to look pretty because we're just eating it at home. But when I made the rhubarb upside down cake previously, I wanted to do it in a cast iron pan and invert it on a plate so that it looks nicer. I like using the cast iron pan, but I know not everybody has a cast iron pan. So for this video, I'm going to just use a regular baking dish. If you have a cast iron skillet, feel free to use that. If you don't, feel free to use any baking dish. Previously, I have done upside down cakes in a square dish, but what we're going to do first is put some butter in the bottom of this baking dish. We're going to do 3 tablespoons of butter. I will have this recipe written down on my blog, and I will link that in the description of this video. So we're going to do some butter on the bottom, and our next step is to put this in the oven so that it can melt. butter is all melted in our baking dish, so I'm going to take that out of the oven and then we'll start putting the rhubarb in. Actually, what we're going to do first is put our brown sugar layer in. We're just going to sprinkle that right on top of the melted butter. You can do white sugar instead of brown sugar. The brown sugar is going to give it a more caramel look and taste. The white sugar is going to make more of a crunchy crust almost. But the recipe calls for brown sugar. I have tried it with white and it has different results, but both are equally delicious. I will put a picture of the cake made with white sugar instead of the brown sugar for the upside down part so you can see what that looks like. Here's what this looks like in the bowl, just with our melted butter and our brown sugar. Here's what that looks like. We've covered the rhubarb completely, but that's okay because the point of an upside down cake is to flip it upside down once it's cooked so that the caramelized layer with the fruit will be on the top for presentation. Even though this cake didn't come out of the pan as cleanly as I had hoped, I think it still looks pretty good. I ended up just scraping out the pieces that were stuck onto the pan and just putting it on the cake while it was still hot. And when my husband saw it, he said it looked pretty good. He didn't really realize it didn't turn out as well as I had hoped. But most importantly for me, the cake tasted really, really good. Well, the cake didn't end up looking exactly like I would have hoped, but that's okay. It's still going to taste delicious. I've got my slice here. As you can see, it's a really fluffy cake. And then we've got the nice topping with the fruit and the butter and sugar. It's so good. It's a really tender cake, and the rhubarb is pretty tangy, but I like that. It tastes really nice with the little bit of sweetness from the sugar and the richness from the butter. Definitely going to be enjoying this for dessert again later tonight when my husband gets home. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out my blog post, which is linked in the description of this video, if you want the full recipe. And if you decide to try it out, please come back and leave me a comment telling me how it went. Again, thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day.